Hello and welcome to day 3 of Secrets of Writing Sexual Tension. Um, I opened the door a few minutes early just so people could get in, get comfortable, find their spaces, and then we'll dig into today's lecture, trying to keep it at 20 minutes or so. Then we'll go into examples from people's homework so that we get an opportunity. Yay, Paulette is here from Ohio. Paulette, you beat Denise from Alaska. Jan is here from Oregon. And Greer from Trinidad and Tobago. So Greer, you get the furthest away from where we are here. So you get the award for being the first one signing in and the first one from a distance. Any questions people might have had that have come up as they're working? And I apologize for the gravel in my throat because I'm losing my throat just from talking. And New Jersey is checking in. For those who continue for me to have just Facebook user like New Jersey, the last sentence as you enter, as you click on the video to watch the video, it says, you're going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at, and there's a place to click. So if you want to be called by your name, you are going to just click on that link, the blue link at the bottom of that before you enter the actual classroom. Okay. Oh, got some good questions already. And Ontario is checking in. Hi, Donna. Quick question here. And are interim and book length the same as internal and external? No. And this is why, as writers, I think we often cause more work for ourselves. If it was internal conflict or external conflict, I was second before, it is, I would have said that. Now, given that the internal conflict can be the book length, likewise, an external conflict can be the book length, but there's no hard and fast. But it's just what conflict does not get resolved until the end of the book. That's book length. Interim is some event, they want to reach this, they want to do that. That might bring them closer to that external goal, but it doesn't necessarily. So that's what's by the difference between internal and external. Oh, good. There's Michael. That's who's from Maryland. Yes, Sarah, I can see your name this time. Thank you. And we have Florida on board. In Tel Aviv, I did not realize that. And I'm going to say your name wrong. I apologize. Is it Sivan as a long I or Sivan? With kind of a different explanation. Oh, good. And Lou found how to get in with his name on it. Yes. Someone is asking, could you minimize yourself so that it doesn't block text on the slides? Absolutely. And if I forget because I'm thinking about something else, just let me know in the comments. And Anne from France. I'm going to come visit Anne one day because I want to go to France. All right. Just a second here. All right. Somebody asked me a question because they have to leave early, and now I cannot find a way to scroll back. Some days are just more technically challenged than others. I think. Okay, I swear that I should be hired by tech companies, because if there's one way to break tech, I can find it. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. So those who need to leave early can at least see the lecture portion. So today on day 3, we're going to look at a specific stage, and this is stage 1, all right, the eye to body. And this eye to body connection is literally one of the most common forms of social contact. It's used every day around the world, throughout time, and throughout cultures. Just because it's common, though, people have a tendency to rush through it or skip over this. Don't, all right? They think that they want to get to the juicy, sexy stuff. Don't. Within seconds of a glance, we notice the sex of a person, the age of a person, the health of a person, their status. Their status often is dependent on their clothes that they wear or any other attitude that they might have, their mood. Just 1 second. I'm going to make this only slides. Nope, that did not do it. Okay, Tech Guy says yes, it did. So it should be only the slides that you're seeing now, and that way I'm here, you know I'm here, but it's about seeing what the information is first. In about as much time as it takes for us to look, literally within nanoseconds, we're rating on a personal score from extreme attractiveness to extreme repulsiveness. The first look and a favorable response can predispose a willingness to move on to the next stage of intimacy. So if you see someone that you are attracted to, there's almost a built-in predisposition, but not always. An unfavorable response means that one or the other of the couple involved must work a little harder to change the initial impression. Why? Because a species that automatically scans everyone for sexual viability, health, age, attraction, are they adaptive? It's an adaptive response, and humans are very adaptive. If you do not make this judgment call, then the likelihood is that everyone is just going to have sex with everyone else when they're in their fertile period in particular. But there's a lot more in human culture than simply wanting to have sex. So if you're a cat, you're looking at another cat, you have sex. If you're a human looking at another human, you say, wait a second, there are other considerations. And that's just a basic understanding. So I'm going to give you, I think, 3 or 4 examples by published authors. And then I'm going to break it down so you can see what we mean by eye to eye. But it was the other man who snared her attention. Darkness lay in the hollows below slashes of cheekbone and along the fine line of his jaw, peered out from large eyes of a color impossible to determine in the low light. Her mind cataloged other details: his bare feet in worn jeans, the shadow of an unshaved beard. His hair was thick and long, of indeterminate color. Now let's look at this again. And what we're going to look at is what specifically is this point of view female character seeing about the male character. She's looking at his cheekbone. She's looking at his jaw, the shape of his jaw. She's looking at his eyes. She's looking at his jeans or clothing, but very specific clothing. She's looking at the beard and his hair. Now we take it a step further. We're looking here, the blue is symbolizing the emotional response. It's not just she saw his cheekbone, but it was the hollows, so a different, not just the cheeks, but it was the slashes of cheekbone. Slashes is a very specific word that was chosen to give a stronger image of this person that is not necessarily positive, because it has associations with fighting or tact. Then she goes into fine line to describe the jaw and large eyes. Now she arrives at his home. It's almost dark. In fact, that's why she cannot see these details. It is bare feet and it's worn jeans. It's an unshaved beard and thick and long hair. Now, there is no hint of the conflict here, but in the examples in the homework that I want you to do, I want you to make sure that there's some, even if you have to say a line ahead of time to explain what the conflict is, to make sure that I'm clear about it. So I'm not telling you to up the conflict and there is enough conflict. All right. And this is just the hint of that. It was darkness lay in those hollows. Again, not necessarily, oh my God, I'm going to run the other way type of conflict, but it lets you know that she's wary of him. She is aware of him, but also wary of him. So here's another example. Dax's brows furrowed. There, standing with a proud, straight posture that surprised him, was another female. Now, Dax has gone into a very tightly controlled prison in order to break out a friend of his, someone he's very protective of. But this other person, this woman, is next to his friend. But this one was filthy. The kind of grime built up over time, not the surface dirt such as Rena, his friend, had acquired during her short stay. Now, this is one of these examples where it's not necessarily a favorable what he sees of the woman. It is quite unfavorable. So you would definitely want to revisit this if and when this woman gets cleaned up. This one had hair cropped even shorter than Rena's, hair that was either dark into black or so dirty it didn't bear thinking about. So it's not a favorable view of her, but they're in this prison. And the conflict that immediately will be coming is that the woman speaks and she demands to be taken out of the prison with Rena. And he knows has about 3 choices. He can take her with her, which makes things a lot more difficult. It's hard enough just to get one person out and running fast without being discovered. The second thing, kill her right there so she can't speak and let the guards know who took Rena out of the prison. Or the third thing is to, I'm sure there's a third thing. Take her, kill her, leave her behind, and possibly have it expose exactly who Rena was associated with, which he is the sky pirate. And that would mean that there would be a bounty on Rena's head, and he doesn't want that for her. So that was the first read through. Here's the second. What are we seeing specific? She's standing. It was her posture he noticed, and that she was female. And the hair. So the hair is shorter. We don't even know at this time what the length of Rena's, but he notices that it's shorter. Now we have the emotional response. The first furrowed, his brows furrowed, that's a unsure, I'm thinking, questioning, visceral response used in body language. And it is that her posture was proud and straight. And that surprised him, which is another emotional response. This one was filthy. Grime built up over time. In a prison, that kind of grime gets built up because they've been in the prison for a while. They had hair, but it was either dark unto black or so dirty it didn't bear thinking about. So there's not really a hint of the conflict, but the author had built up to this point that you knew that he was in there trying to get Rena out, how dangerous it was. And if he left his friend there, she would probably quickly die because it was such a rumored bad jail. Here's another example. His face was so lean, she thought suddenly, not predatory, but the face of a man wouldn't step aside if trouble got in his way. His eyes were guarded, but she noticed before how easily he concealed his thoughts. And his mouth, how was it she'd never realized how tempting, how sensual his mouth was? Or had she simply pretended not to? It wouldn't be soft, she thought, as her gaze lingered on it. It would be hard, and the taste essentially male. She could lean just a bit closer, and Laurel's eyes widened at the drift of her own thoughts. So what is she looking at? She's looking at his face and his eyes and his mouth. But so much more is about the emotional response. The face was lean. And because it's thought suddenly, it means that she really hadn't noticed that before. She kept herself from noticing. It wasn't predatory. So that's a good thing, and as in, it's not a warning. But he wouldn't step aside if trouble got in his way, which meant that he was probably a protector, or she felt that he was. His mouth, tempting, sensual. It would be hard, and the taste essentially male. Now, in this one, we have a hint of the conflict. Her ways of describing the eyes, they're guarded. Having somebody else holding back, being guarded, concealing his thoughts, this could be a conflict. That she'd worked beside him, worked beside him, but she knew that she didn't really know his thoughts to his mouth. Had she simply pretended not to, this had been her de facto. He's not like other guys that she met that she could quickly charm or ignore, but she pretended that she wasn't aware of that mouth. And then again, when it goes into more detail, her response to that is that she's leaning forward, which is the attraction, but then her eyes widened, which is body language for taking in more information and kind of a surprise at the drift of her own thoughts. So she's catching herself. These are very subtle, attracted to, feel something strongly about it, and then pulling herself back from it. Okay, so that is something actually you do in your assignments if you want. I don't know how Facebook will take for the color, but just for your own self-editing. You know, if you're looking at a section, okay, this is the first meet, their first look of each other, how much specific awareness do I have or want? What am I looking at? So that the reader knows I'm not just looking at their face necessarily, unless you add a couple of then specifics about that face, but that you are not just saying, I looked at his face and then have an emotional response to that and then no conflict. That waters that sexual tension down. And for those writing in other than romance, that might be just what you want and need. So don't worry about that as a do or die. It's the only option. Now, I had one question here that was raised that I did not get to yet. The question's from Sarah, and it says, is it enough for the book conflict to be that the heroine or the hero is afraid of love? With my book conflict, I wrap the fear into a popular poor, rich trope. Should the emotional issue always be folded into a romance trope? Okay, there's no one hard and fast rule here. If you're writing romance and you are writing something with a strong external plot line, now this external plot line is that poor, rich. One of them is one is the other. That can be the book length conflict. It's romantic suspense. They need to work with each other for X, which is the goal, but one might survive and the other might not. That type of thing, that could be the external conflict. Will they survive what's going on? But other types of romance books, such as a sweet romance or an inspirational romance, that the external goal might be simply, it's not, I'm going to stay in my house, I don't care what, then the conflict is only going to happen if, and I'll use male and male, he's in the house, he owns the house, but somebody else, bigwig, has come into town and wants to demolish the house and do a development. So Big Will is trying to buy him out or run him out. So that external goal creates the conflict between them. But if you're in a situation where he's a firefighter and he's happy with his job and he likes it, but his wife doesn't seem content anymore, and for him, it's because he realizes that he's lost his faith. He doesn't believe in love like he used to. And he doesn't believe in a God that he could ask for help in his marriage like he used to. So that's the type of thing that it could be tied into the romance trope. That the conflict is about what's going to keep him from her. And she basically says, if you don't get your faith back, you're not the man I married. And he has to do that hard. That's the conflict between them. And yes, so then he will get his faith back. He'll work to get his faith back. He might do I attended church, isn't that enough type of thing. But it is not the overarching book length. Book length means end of book. Conflict is internal to him, not to her, but to him. Okay, in that kind of situation, the interim, short-term conflict could be she's actually gotten involved, not physically with someone else at work, but somebody that seems to listen to her, to hear her, where her husband is always grumpy and not happy. So that's an interim. That has to be resolved before the two of them can get together. But it doesn't have to take the whole book to resolve it. It can be resolved by the middle of the book. Okay, so I hope that helps a little bit. So Sarah, if I wasn't clear enough, just let me know and I will try resolve. Corinne says, why were the blue descriptions in the previous examples emotional? Well, what I did was I looked at what are the things that give you an idea of how the point of view person is feeling about what they're seeing. So that is just judgment from that point of view character. So when she's looking at mouth, that's just the external specific detail that she's looking at, but how tempting, how sensuous, that is her emotional response to what she's seeing. So the blue is just to let you see that that is what is going on. Okay, Chris, so you could have a book like external conflict in addition to the book like internal conflict. In commercial fiction, you should always have both, because the internal conflict is what's keeping them from reaching oftentimes the external goal. And if you're writing in a romance, the internal conflict is what is keeping the couple from realizing that they love each other. If you are not writing in a romance, but you're writing in a mystery, the external conflict is solve the mystery. How do you go about solving that? The internal conflict might be that the best suspect is the best friend of the sleuth. And that's going to make it more challenging for that point of view character, the sleuth, to resolve that issue. So in commercial fiction, you have both external and internal. Okay, let me go back and see if I can do it this time. Make sure I get any questions. How's your shoulder? It is better. It has been better than it was. I can actually raise my hand. That's really nice. Again, for the names, when you sign in to join the StreamYard video, the last sentence is going to say, you're going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name. And then there's a blue link, and click that link and read your. Yes. Mary's gone, and Mary came back. It's just magic. Thank you, Davies. Put the link in. Okay. Making sure I catch some questions here before I move on. I did minimize myself, so all you should be seeing is the screen. Technically, StreamYard is the function that Facebook uses. So we cannot change it. And you can do it just once. And once you've done it, then you don't have to do it each time. But, all right, here we go. Let me make sure that I want to get back to the tech guy, honey. All right. How do I get it back to just the slides? Yay, okay, now I'm on just the slides. So these are the questions that were posted to the homework. One of the biggest issues that I was seeing with people's answers in the homework was that they were mistaking the story goal for being a conflict. Just because you're trying to reach something or accomplish something, that is not the conflict. The conflict is what is making it harder for them to do that. So here's an example from class, the context, and thank you very much, Sarah Lynn, for putting this in, is the context. This is from Lily's Mechanic, an inspirational contemporary second chance romance. Okay, that says to me the inspirational going to have, we're never going to get to stage 8, 9, and 10 probably in an inspirational. But it is not as intense as some other types of romances. And the second chance is the couple has a second chance to find the love. All right. Book length conflict. Carson hurt Lily when he left for the military and never returned. Can she trust him to not leave again? Yes, this is book length. It will take until the end of the book for her to really find out. Can she trust him or can she not? And probably the black moment, she will, up to that point, she might have been learning to trust him, but then something happens that reminds her of the past, and that trust is again hit because it's fragile, and she pulls away. So that is book length romance. Interim, halfway through the story, Lily learns her dad has a disease which is hereditary. Can Lily allow herself to get involved with Carson with a potential illness hanging over her head? Now, this, if it can be resolved with a blood test or something so that the answer can be answered, then yes, this is an interim conflict. It's an extra reason why she doesn't want to act on her attraction to her. But if it is something that there is no test to find out, then it's actually book length conflict. So it all depends on the details. All right, here's Judith. Judith is writing a sweet, a clean, meaning no sex, no graphic language type of book. And it's book 6 of a series about siblings finding their soulmates. That means it has connections to the books that have already been published, but also has the opportunity to set up something in the next book of the series. Book length conflict. They ran away and got married in high school. This is backstory. Her dad forced them to sign an annulment. Backstory, 10 years later, they discovered dad never filed the petition and they're still legally married. Only she's engaged to another man. Yes, this is book length conflict because now it's basically a menage a trois, but without the sex. So she can go ahead and marry, but it also gives him a reason to, he doesn't have forever to make up his mind. Now, the interim conflict, this is coming from his point of view. Can he convince her they still belong together? That actually is a book length conflict for him. An interim conflict is something like short term that they've got to. So what you did here, Judith, is basically show her book length contact and his book length conflict. Can he do this given their past? So it might be something like, oh, is she willing to meet him in public in a date type environment like a restaurant? In order, she's going there to talk it through with him. He's going there to come back and start his courtship and convincing her that what her dad did was wrong. Now, if she really loves her dad, that's going to be a little bit of a hurdle. So Greer says she saw this in a movie. And yes, there's 12 plots and Shakespeare used them all. So it's how Judith develops this that is the difference. Stephanie says, can he convince her to stay in the small town long enough? That could be a short term. It's either a yes or a no. It happens doesn't have to happen at the end of the story. It has to happen somewhere in between. So the interim is the short term. I got to go through this in order to keep moving towards that. And this is if I can get through this, it makes things more likely I can reach the external goal. From him, it's to stay together. For her, she doesn't necessarily know. But when she starts the story, it's probably she's engaged to another man. She's ready to move on already. So her interim conflict could be different than his. Okay, I hope that helps a little bit. All right, this is Sarah. Book length conflict. Poor orphaned heroine believes she doesn't fit in with the hero's rich and famous tattoo artist family. Okay, it doesn't really matter, I don't think, that he's a tattoo artist. It matters that if he really is rich, he probably didn't earn it from being a tattoo artist, but his family has money, her family does not. So there is a society conflict here. And grief and guilt are the crux of why she holds the hero and his family at arm's length. Now, this is a different, the grief and the guilt are the conflict. So you actually have two book length conflicts instead of, let's look at the interim and see if we can get an answer. Can heroine rise above her fears of needles to get a tattoo commemorating her late parents? Now that is a short-term conflict, yes. But the challenge is when you have two different issues, overarching book issues, which is the strongest here? Is it the grief and the guilt, I think, is her motivation for feeling that she's never going to fit in, but it isn't necessarily. So these are like having two choo-choo trains running along the length of the book. And when you have two choo-choo trains, the reader can't decide which one is most important. This is where you as the author gets to decide, is it their class differences that's most important, is really going to hold her back when push comes to shove? Or is it her guilt and grief that she's going to hang on to? And they become the norm after a while, unless you actively work to overcome them. So you have two book length conflicts, but they're not necessarily, one could be the motivation, but it doesn't sound like the grief and the guilt are creating challenges. It could be, Stephanie, but it's not coming across. She's holding them at arm's length. That's one issue. Her feeling she doesn't fit in is a different issue. So the guilt and the grief could be the motivation, and then that's resolved earlier in the story. But as it is now, Sarah has two very strong conflicts. And so that's all I'm saying. I don't know the story. You don't know the story. Sarah probably has an answer to this. It's just not clear here. And if it's not clear here, I can't say it's clear here. But her interim conflict here, can the heroine rise above her fear of needles? This is a short-term thing that she's going to be able to do or not be able to do. And if she's able to do it, it can be one thing that draws her closer, and he celebrates with her, that type of thing. Okay, B.A. Davies. Historical fiction, 1940s. All right, thank you for the setup. Just book length. Can the main character, who is a Aleutian, all right, the pilot, and his partner, a gunner, initiate and maintain a secret romance during World War II? Okay, this is book length conflict. Why? Because most military have a very clear about the boundaries that people working together close in the military are not allowed to fraternize with other people within the military. They can do it with and again, as long as that's clear to the reader, because some militaries don't have this issue. So as long as you make it clear to the reader that this is, given the 1940s and this country, they should be able to do it. Interim. Will they escape to safety after a crash landing near the front lines, but within enemy territory? Excellent. That's short term. It could take anywhere from a quarter to the book to halfway through the book. That could be all depends. It could be just one chapter. So that is a very clear, very good interim. So whatever that plane is. Also, Facebook user says, any romance between men created conflict. Absolutely. So if it's male on male, that's more, it's book length, very definitely. And as Lou says, it was type of grounds for court-martial, and depending, again, on which military, it could be grounds for one or the other is going to be in the stockade or be shot. They just did not want to. So again, thank you, BA, for sharing that. These are very good. Sarah says the book length conflict is the grief and the guilt. See, and that's just it. Is sometimes it's like when you first go into the first time and the 10th time that you pitch your story to a agent or an editor, and you basically you get nervous, and so it's this and this and this, and the editor or agent is trying to get clear what the conflict is. And you see, just my raising the question that there's two conflicts here, let Sarah get very clear which one matters most, because she's writing the story and she knows this one is not going to be resolved. So wonderful, because that is the grief and the guilt. And so it takes the whole book to overcome that in order to accept that attraction and a stronger relationship with them. So did I miss any questions? Did you know that you were doing closed captioning as well? No, I did not, because I'm not seeing what you're seeing. And it's the default setting for Facebook. So it's a good thing I don't swear. Participants can turn it off on their end. So if you get, I feel sorry for the closed captioning, trying to get my sentences in order. But if that bothers you, go ahead and you can turn it off on your end. So, and there's a question, a Facebook user says, back to Judith's story, how does the heroine's fiance feel about learning that his fiance is still married to her first husband? And again, that is, you're already so engaged in the story that you want to know more. She kept it focused. Book length was point of view of the woman in the story. Interim conflict was from the male's point of view in the story. So clearly part of how he feels about it is what he wants to convince her of. All right. Okay. Someone says, could there be multiple interim conflicts within a book? There absolutely could and should be. If you think about it, every scene, not the sequel, but the scene that is written has some kind of small conflict involved in it. So yes, multiple interim. It's just that what I'm seeing is a lot of people are pulling two book length kinds of conflict and calling one interim, but it's not. It's too large of a conflict. Somebody appreciates the large print slides, and that's why I do them. And Chris, is the book length conflict leaked to the core beliefs and fears? It can be, but it doesn't have to be. The book length conflict, all right, it all depends on what you're writing. And if there is a strong external plot line, and such as there was a Linda Howard one that Kiss Me Before I Sleep. And that's where she, the female, is a CIA assassin, but her adopted daughter, a little girl that she picked up in Kosovo or something, left in the rubble, and brought to friends of hers to raise. The three of them were murdered by a very wealthy, quote unquote, businessman. And the businessman is someone who someone who is a very dangerous drug lord. He has his fingers in all sorts of pies, but he also happens to be an asset to the CIA because he shares enough information with them for them not to take down his empire and to keep him alive. But she went and killed him because he was behind the death of her daughter and her two best friends. So the CIA is treating her as a rogue agent. The hero is called a cleaner or a sweeper or something, and he's being brought in to go after her and to make sure that she doesn't cause any more problems. And his mandate is up to and including extermination. So he can go in and kill her from the CIA. She doesn't know that. The next thing she's going after is a laboratory owned by the man that she has already killed. His two sons have taken it over. The laboratory, she's going after it because that was the last thing her friends were checking into before they were killed. And it's clear that they are creating some type of biological weapon in there. So if she does that and succeeds, he will have to kill her. So that kind of book length conflict, it's all external. Is he going to kill her or not kill her? And so that's an external that lasts, but there's little internal. Can they break into these interim? Can they break into the laboratory? Can they keep her away from the bad businessman's family who are out hunting her to eliminate her? Things like that. So I didn't realize it, and I apologize. This is, let's go back one thing here. Stephanie, book length conflict. Someone broke into and destroyed the heroine's home. Story goal is to feel safe in her home. This, it could be a book length, but you're also, how does the reader, when you're trying to have a character reach an emotional point, feeling safe, falling in love, it's a hard thing because how do we know it continues for her? So just be aware of that. It can be a full-length goal, but it has to be, make sure that at the end, the resolution, that the reader is really clear, because we do not always live in a safe world. And so she may feel comfortable in her, safe in her home, but how do you show that? As long as you can show it, you're good. Interim, the heroine has decided to adopt and train a guard dog, but she's afraid of dogs and must overcome her fears. Great interim goal. Ties in nicely with that book length goal that she has. So here's the challenge. The story goal is to feel safe, but what is the conflict? That she doesn't feel safe. Okay, Stephanie gets it. Book length versus interim conflict. Should these both be internal or external or both? There's no hard and fast rule, Shunda. There is no one thing is going to work for everybody's book. So this is where you, as the writer, get to decide. This book, it might be internal. That book, it might be external. The next book might have both. So it's up to you. Okay, let me get to the assignment here before we end our day. Assignment #H3. Show one character first notices the other. Keep in mind specific details. So this is the eye to body. Keep to one paragraph. Now, the one that I gave you as examples, they were actually one paragraph, but I wanted to make the type long enough or big enough so everybody had no problem seeing them. But the homework is going to be, you're looking at stage 1, eye to body. What specific details are they going to notice? What emotional response do they have at those details? And conflict. I say bonus points, but it would be lovely. And if you can't show it in something from something you're currently working on, then go ahead and at the top say the conflict is X. So that way I can look at what they're seeing, what they're reacting to emotionally, and let you know, yes, no, maybe. Okay. Remember to use that #H3, put it close together. I have not even been able to get into the mainstream. So if you sent something earlier this week and it's not showing up on the right-hand side of the screen when you look down and it says #H1, #H2, #H3 now, or #Q, then it's probably buried, because everything that goes in the right goes in the left, and plus everything else. So I'm focusing on the right because that's where I can quickly and get to it. So any other questions here? Oops. Nope, I screwed it up. Okay, I think I went dark. So, okay, if you're seeing dark, just listen. So can you put assignments in comments so I can copy? They are actually uploaded to the Facebook page. So I don't have access to the print version with me right now, but at the top of you go up to tabs and you look at files.
They're seeing you.
Oh, they are seeing me. Okay, I guess I won't do this or anything else. So back to that question. So the assignment is, it is sent to you directly. It goes in the files at the top of the Facebook page, and you'll see it in there. It's at the very last thing, so you could go through the video and just scroll down to the end of it and see it there. So I don't have it here, simply because I have no idea if it would turn up to be about this big and you couldn't read it anyway. So trying to find as many ways to get it to you as possible. Sarah, can you please explain the difference between H1 and H3? Okay, homework 1, I didn't specify that you had to use the first I to body. Some people use the voice, which is stage 3. Some people use touching of the hands, which is stage 4. Some people used multiple stages, all the way up to stage 9 for theirs. I did not limit what stage you were meant to see. So this homework is focusing everybody specifically on what did you see. Now, if you have submitted that already for homework 1 and I responded, no need. You don't have to do the homework. But I want to, again, thank those who have taken the time to give feedback on other people's homework, because it really makes a difference. It's just a huge difference. So if you don't want to, you could show it from a different person's point of view. If you did it from the man's point of view of her initially or him, then you could do a different point of view. The only thing is I wanted to zero in on this because it does matter. Okay, I love this. I still see you. Okay, yes, this evening, you should, like I sent out an email that contains the homework and gives you an idea. And if you go to that Facebook page, homepage, top, it'll say videos and other things. You go to files, and that's where documents are. And he's put a version of it there. So, and B.A. Davies says too that it's great to get feedback from the other participants. That is all of you are here to learn. If you weren't here to learn, you wouldn't be here. And all of you have something to contribute. Even if it's, if you make a real big boo-boo, guess what? Either I or somebody else would probably catch it, no harm. But it gives other people something to think about. And we do not get this on a regular basis. And so we're flying blind. Yes, Stephen does. And you got zero response. Now, this is something that it may be the person who posted did not come back and say thank you. I mean, that is, you would assume that would be a minimum to say, but they may not even be aware if you do not post their name. So if I go in and I say, thank you, and then Hillary Tubin, Hillary Tubin, I put that in there intentionally so that when Hillary goes to her Facebook page, it will show that she has a response. And that way she'll go over and see it. If that's not in there and we've just said, this looks great because of this, and leave it at that, then it's up to Hillary to go through and find, did anybody else respond? Stephen, I meant zero response to my homework. Stephen, I just haven't gotten to everything. All right, and that's why I'm asking for other people to also post. So there's several hundred people in here. The likelihood of my getting to everything, I am going to try and go through people's work that I haven't yet responded to, but no one is going to get my personal response for every single of the 4 homework assignments that we'll be doing this week, just because I can't do it. All right. So I apologize if it was posted in the wrong area. I'll guarantee you 100% I cannot get to it. But I am going to try and pick out specifically people who I have not responded to before. And if anybody else sees Stephen's homework and want to post on it, please do. All right, she's saying from the other participants. They probably assume that once I've said something to them, that maybe their feedback may not be appreciated. I have no idea. But no, everybody is not going to get responses from everybody else, nor is everybody going to get responses from moi. All right, can you show the slides for the assignment again? Maybe. Let me try. Okay. I'm getting through back to the slides. I have to go through the first one, so I'll go real quick, all the way through them to get to the last one to show the homework here. Okay, there you are. So whoever asked, could you show the slide for the assignment again? I think I've created a new leak record, how many ways to keep myself out of the webinar. Okay, Pamela's asking for H3, does it have to be the love interest or can it be someone else? Well, it depends. If you are writing a romance, yes, it has to be the love interest because that's who the sexual tension is going to be with. If you're not writing romance, just put writing mystery and it can be somebody else. But what it is this is not an assignment just to show me that one person is looking at another. This is an assignment geared towards creating sexual tension between two characters in your story. So if you don't want sexual tension with that person, there's really no need to do it because the whole assignment is, what do you see? What's the emotional response to it? And what's the conflict? Why can't they act on this emotional response? So if it's just somebody else in a story, I'm not sure why you would post. And there's enough postings that something like that is really going to trip me up because I would just say, no, you don't have strong emotional response if you're missing 2 out of 3 of these elements. So does that make sense? And yes, it is awesome that I have a built-in tech guy. He's trying to protect the world on a daily basis. So, and then Paulette for Linda shared the homework. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Paulette, for doing that too. So, appreciate your being here. We will see you tomorrow. And when you post your homework, make sure you use that hashtag, and I will be getting back to as many people as I can get back. So, one last question. Facebook user, for this homework assignment, does it need to be from the first time the characters meet each other, or can it be when they first start to have positive feelings for the other? It makes sense to have it from the first time that they start seeing the other, that they are aware of them and attracted. There's no point in showing me something where they're not aware or attracted, because all I'm going to tell you is, guess what? They're not aware or attracted, clearly. So that was a good question. All right, we will see you again tomorrow. In the meantime, have fun with that homework assignment. And again, if you have questions, hashtag Q. And I try and keep on top of those every day. All right. Thanks and take care.